In every way, I failed. I had nothing to do. I wondered if I wanted to live any longer. What was the true fate of Christopher Williams? He had the world at his feet in the early 1990s. Christopher Williams was destined to become a legend, from topping the R&B charts to starring in New Jack City. Then the rumors surfaced. Shocking and obscene allegations regarding purported meetings with Diddy and other music moguls. He was plagued by rumors for years. Then, in a strange turn of events, stories of R&B artist Christopher Williams being arrested for stealing headphones from a department shop dominated the news. The fans were taken aback. Was this a miscommunication or an indication of his actual decline? Williams is now speaking out for the first time in decades. What then led to his decline in popularity? Regarding those bombshell Diddy accusations, what did he say? And after suffering health problems and being mistakenly placed in a coma, where is Christopher Williams now? This is Christopher Williams' terrible unsung story. It's also far more depressing than you may imagine. Born on August 22, 1967, Christopher Lawrence Williams and his brother grew up in the Bronx, New York's infamous Edenwald projects. His early years were anything from stable. He never saw his Caucasian father. He was never even met by Christopher. His mother battled drug addiction and spent a lot of time in and out of jail, which prevented the little boy from receiving the kind of parental support that all children need. When Christopher was eventually given to his aunt and uncle, he finally found some stability. For a while, it appeared as though he had a chance at a new kind of life because they lived in a nicer area of the Bronx. However, Christopher was unable to resist the street's allure despite the change in his environment. He had gotten involved in drug trafficking and hustle by the time he was a teenager, trapped in the same cycle that so many young guys in his community were enmeshed in. The day his best friend was killed, everything changed. He was rocked by that moment. He permanently left the streets behind. Christopher started pursuing a new dream after leaving the streets behind: music. He was inspired to pursue this ambition in part by his well-known aunt, the renowned Ella Fitzgerald. At the High School of Music and Art in Harlem, he cultivated his gift and eventually found a voice that would draw attention. He enrolled in Purchase College, which is now the State University of New York, after graduating. However, life had other ideas. He had to make the tough decision to leave school when his girlfriend became pregnant with their son, Christopher Jr. Even though he was just 18, he was resolved to support his family. Michael Rosenblatt, an A&R representative whose father was a Geffen Records executive, came into play at that point. He was drawn to Christopher, particularly after he openly asserted that his voice has Teddy Pendergrass's profound strength. Rosenblatt, intrigued but dubious, gave him a business card and instructed him to provide evidence. As requested by Rosenblatt, Christopher delivered the demo, and it was successful. His first major break came when he was signed by Geffen Records. He packed his bags and moved to the West Coast, prepared to pursue his goal, as the label was situated in Los Angeles. Finding a manager was one of his top concerns, and he had Cassandra Mills in mind. One day, Christopher brazenly approached her as she was leaving a conference. He made it apparent that he wanted her to manage him, introduced himself, and told her about his new record deal. She invited him to sing, putting him on the spot. He did that very moment, and that was plenty to persuade her. She consented to accept him. In 1989, Christopher's first single, Talk to Myself, was released with Cassandra at his side. The song from Adventures in Paradise, his album, shot to number 4 on the R&B charts. Critics and fans, however, took issue with the success because they saw how much the song resembled Bobby Brown's huge single, My Prerogative, which had been at the top of the charts only a year before. Still, Christopher had the upper hand. His ascent was further solidified with his subsequent single, Promises, Promises, a poignant ballad. Christopher co-wrote the song, which became popular and peaked at number 7 on the R&B charts. Later on, he acknowledged that the lyrics were intimate and an emotional representation of his relationship with Stacey Dash, a rising star at the time. Christopher Williams wasn't exactly renowned for declining attention, and by the late 1980s, he was reaping the benefits of celebrity. Later on, he acknowledged that he was not cut out for monogamy. One woman was just not enough for him at that point in his life. He had no desire to get married. However, in 1989, such freewheeling way of living almost got him into serious difficulties. He was involved in a strange and disturbing occurrence at a hotel that year involving his close buddy and striking resemblance, Alb. Yes. Al claimed that when he momentarily left his room to take a shower, he was in his room with a woman. Christopher allegedly tried to persuade the woman that he was Al during that brief window when he came in from the adjacent suite. It was implied that he wished to literally replace Al, but Christopher's story was rather different. He asserted that he had entered the room merely to use the restroom and had no such intentions. Whatever actually transpired, the consequences were immediate. Al was taken into custody and accused of rape, but the accusations were later withdrawn. Thanks in large part to Cassandra Mills, who quietly pulled strings behind the scenes to keep Christopher out of the spotlight. His name never appeared in the news. Christopher Williams had already established himself in the R&B industry by the early 1990s. He was hungry for more, but he had the hits, the voice, and the looks. He desired to become more well-known and move beyond music. New Jack City entered the picture at that point. Ever the visionary, Cassandra Mills obtained the script for what would quickly become a cult favorite. She spotted an opportunity as soon as she read it. She was adamant about getting Christopher a part, and she succeeded. His contribution was minimal, but it left a lasting impression. Christopher's appearance added a whole new level of prominence to New Jack City, which, like the movie itself, became one of the defining films of the time. That wasn't all, though. In addition, he wrote the song I'm Dreaming for the movie's soundtrack. The song quickly became popular, reaching the top of the R&B charts. At the time, it looked like nothing could stop him from becoming the biggest hit of his career. Behind the scenes, Christopher Williams' personal life was falling apart despite his professional success. Actress Stacey Dash and he had a poisonous relationship that had started off promising. What had begun as an intense love affair was now characterized by conflict and instability. Nevertheless, Stacey gave birth to Austin, Christopher's second child, before they permanently split ways. Tensions over custody further strained his life after the painful separation. Christopher, however, did not remain unmarried for very long. Soon after, he started dating another well-known person, this time Halle Berry, one of Hollywood's newest and most promising talents. Fans were ready to follow their every move, and newspapers were quick to take notice of their union. From the outside, Christopher appeared to be living the dream. A rising fan base, a romance with an attractive actress, and a flourishing music career. However, his label position was changing while his romantic life garnered media attention. When Geffen Records was purchased by MCA, his contract with the label abruptly ended. But Christopher still had a lot of influence because of I'm Dreaming's enormous success. Signing labels waited in line, and Uptown Records won the contract following a fierce bidding battle. Christopher returned to the studio with a newfound sense of purpose. Changes, his sophomore album, was released in 1992. It was more than a title. Everything that was going on in his life at the time was reflected in it. The honest and heartfelt lead single, All I See, which Christopher co-wrote, was influenced by the continuing custody dispute with Stacey Dash. The song reached the top 20 on the R&B chart because it struck a chord with listeners. However, his charm was genuinely brought to fans' attention by the second track, Every Little Thing You Do. His fourth top 10 hit, the smooth, catchy song shot to number 7 on the R&B chart, establishing him as a unique voice in the genre. On the professional front, things were improving once more. However, as history would demonstrate, Christopher Williams's high points never appeared to last very long. By 1993, Christopher Williams was experiencing a collision between his personal and professional lives that would eventually rock his career to its foundation. In that same year, he and Heather Barnes had their third child, a daughter called Sierra. With a third woman, it was his third child. Additionally, his annoyance with the music industry was quickly erupting as he continued to manage the challenges of parenting. Simultaneously, a potentially transformative opportunity knocked. Uptown Records was contacted by MTV Unplugged to show interest in having Christopher appear in a future edition. This was crucial for an R&B musician looking to establish his crossover appeal. He took advantage of the opportunity to demonstrate his versatility by performing a moving rendition of Teddy Pendergrass's 1979 hit song, Come Go With Me. According to reports, he gave the performance his all. However, Christopher was shocked to see that his performance had been completely omitted when the show aired. MTV decided to play his hit, Every Little Thing You Do, instead. Later, the network clarified that they felt it would be more logical to highlight one of Christopher's own songs because he was still relatively new to their genre. It did not sit well with Christopher. He was certain that his own label, Uptown Records, made the decision, and he wasn't going to overlook it. He stormed into the Uptown office building in a fit of passion with the sole purpose of making them feel his wrath. He later claimed, "I wasn't having it. I took the couch at the elevator and smashed through the glass. Most record companies have a glass door and a buzzer. You can't even get past a certain point. You don't have to buzz me in," I said to them. He marched over to the office of Andre Harold, the founder and president of Uptown, and proceeded to tear it apart, tearing wallpaper off the walls, smashing gold and platinum plaques, and destroying machines. "I'm in," he said, referring to his own office. According to Christopher, the first was in a full rage, and I just didn't act like your artist, and that was going to be a problem. News of the outburst quickly circulated the building, with some employees whispering that they wished they had been present to see it. Christopher responded, "You're glad you weren't there. You have no right to treat me the way you did, I assure you." Even after Christopher Williams's explosive meltdown at Uptown Records, where he destroyed offices, shattered gold records, and left a trail of chaos, founder and president Andre Harold was surprisingly willing to forgive. "I was really frustrated, but I'm done. I'm mad and I'm done, like I'm done with Uptown." Harold remained confident in Christopher's abilities and was willing to work with him going forward. But Christopher had already made up his mind. He wasn't just done with Uptown, he was done with everything it stood for. The betrayal was too great, the frustration too intense, and he left for forever. Soon after, a new opportunity presented itself. Christopher signed a record deal with Giant Records. And this time, everything seemed to be coming together. It was the largest deal he had ever made in his career, and even better, Cassandra Mills, who had always supported him, was now the label's president of urban music. It seemed like a new beginning, with his trusted mentor at his side and the creative freedom he so desperately sought. His third studio album, Not a Perfect Man, was released in 1995. The title seemed appropriate, almost prophetic, and Christopher threw himself into the project, hoping it would be the first of a successful second act, but the album did not yield any hit singles. When the dust settled, Giant quietly decided not to renew his contract, and the hits, both personal and professional, continued to come in. At about the same time, years after his highly publicized relationship with Halle Berry had ended, the actress gave an interview that shocked the public. Radio support was weak, promotion was patchy, and the shifting tides of R&B left little room for his style of smooth, emotionally driven ballads. She never publicly identified her abuser, but the public didn't need confirmation as rumors and speculation swirled and many fingers pointed to Christopher Williams after she disclosed that an abusive ex-boyfriend had hit her so hard that it ruptured her left eardrum, causing her to lose 80% of her hearing in that ear. In an attempt to clear his name, Christopher took a risk and publicly blamed actor Wesley Snipes for the incident. Whether this was accurate or not, it made no difference, because by that point, Christopher's reputation was already tarnished in the eyes of the industry, and he was unaware that his violent Uptown episode and the specter of domestic abuse accusations had effectively blackballed him. By the late 1990s, Christopher had completely withdrawn from the spotlight, moving to Virginia, where his adoptive parents lived, a world away from Los Angeles boardrooms and New York stages. As his name became radioactive in studios and boardrooms, labels stopped calling. Managers stopped pitching, and invitations to collaborate dried up. The very industry that had once crowned him a rising king quietly closed its doors. There, in the quiet of the South, he started to pick up the pieces, re-established his faith, leaned toward Christianity, and attempted to rediscover not only his voice, but also his purpose. Christopher Williams didn't entirely vanish in the years that followed his withdrawal from the public eye. He just changed his direction. Even though the mainstream music industry had abandoned him, he took up acting, which had always subtly appealed to him. With a natural charisma and stage presence, Christopher started establishing a second career in theater and on screen, taking on small parts and cameos in movies and TV shows, gradually establishing a niche for himself as a working actor. After 6 years away from the recording booth, Christopher returned to music in 2001 with his fourth studio album, Real Men Do. However, it was on stage that he really flourished. Off-Broadway became his home, and he starred or co-starred in a number of well-received theater productions, reminding both fans and critics that his talents went far beyond the microphone. Although it didn't chart like his previous records had, it was a significant milestone. Christopher wasn't done. In 2014, he took another creative leap, this time into gospel, and joined forces with fellow vocalists Wes Morgan, Melvin Williams, Sean McLemore, and Doug Williams to form a supergroup called Five Men. It was a mature, introspective project that reflected the trials and hard lessons of the previous decade. It was a long cry from the sensuous, silky tunes of his New Jack Swing days, but it reflected where he was in life, grounded, introspective, and looking for something more than fame. Together, they published a spiritually motivated album called Champions, which was meant to inspire rather than impress. Then, on September 30th of that year, rumors circulated that the former R&B star had been arrested for shoplifting. According to a source who spoke to TMZ, Christopher entered a Kohl's department store in McDonough, Georgia, wearing a baseball cap and casually carrying a tote bag. This bizarre and embarrassing headline brought Christopher's name back into the public eye for all the wrong reasons. Just when things seemed to be settling into a more peaceful rhythm, Christopher allegedly put the $99.99 JBL headphones in his bag and attempted to leave the store, but store security stopped him at the exit. Christopher later claimed that it was all a misunderstanding and that he had just forgotten he had put the headphones in his bag, but the store wasn't buying it. The security footage later showed him walking toward the back of the store where he picked up the headphones. The incident was minor in legal terms, but it was a blow to an already damaged public image. Christopher was escorted out of a Kohl's over a $100 spare of headphones, which felt surreal and depressing for a man who had once been at the top of the R&B world, serenading audiences with #1 hits and starring in cult classic films. The police were called, and he was arrested and booked for petty theft, a misdemeanor. He was released a few hours later. A disturbing rumor that the R&B singer was in a coma surfaced online in November 2021, sending fans into a panic. The rumor was triggered by an Instagram post from his longtime friend Al B. Shore, who claimed to have received a call informing him that Christopher was seriously ill and hospitalized. However, shortly after, a Williams representative publicly denied the report, stating that the singer was not in a coma and requesting that fans respect his privacy. The matter appeared to be settled for the time being, but a year later, Christopher chose to come clean and admit that he had actually experienced a serious health crisis related to kidney failure and had gone into a coma. Christopher Williams was never one to accept defeat, and in the summer of 2024, he came back stronger and more open than ever. The illness had taken a significant toll on his body. He described dramatic weight loss to the point where he struggled just to lift a fork. And at one point, doctors even warned him that he might never walk again. The former member of New Jack Swing laid everything on the table in a very personal interview on rapper Willie D's YouTube channel. He talked openly about his lengthy recovery, his coma, and what it was like to be wrongly declared close to death. But he didn't stop there. The 2-hour discussion also touched on the issues that had plagued him for decades. Christopher adamantly denied the long-running, whispered accusations involving Sean Diddy Combs, his complex relationship with Halle Berry, and the explosive rumors spread by singer Jaguar Wright. It's crucial to remember that Jaguar Wright is much more well known for her explosive industry gossip than for her music. Her claims about Christopher Williams weren't even her first jab at Diddy, long before Cassie Ventura's lawsuit cast a shadow over the music mogul. Wright had already accused him of everything from abuse to outright murder. Over the years, she has garnered more attention for the controversy she causes than for her vocals. But according to Christopher Williams, Wright's story is nothing but pure fabrication. "Anybody who knows me knows that's ridiculous," he said during his sit-down with Willie D., alluding to the rumor that he performed a sex act on Diddy in order to land a record deal. Claims that once sounded outrageous, but to some now seem less impossible. Williams identified a clear flaw in the chronology. He stated, "I came out in '89. I had a record deal in '88. According to Williams, the offending aspect wasn't even the suggestion of a homosexual act. One person in the world alleges that I gave Puffy Filet show to get a record deal in like '92. I would be openly gay if I were gay," he explained. Again, the focus wasn't even on that. It was surrounded by everything else that was mentioned. He appeared more perplexed by Wright's assurance. He said that a number of people in his group wanted to publicly defend him, but that he always told them not to, saying, "Now she's going on and on and on like she's sure. I think, dude, she's in pain. For her, I'm praying. Right now, we need to adopt a new stance. How can what she says affect me if I'm truly solid?" Even Diddy's former security, Gene Deal, who didn't like his former employer, defended Williams. Deal characterized Williams as everything but gentle in an interview with The Art of Dialogue. He actually remembered him as a wild Mount Vernon gangster who was always carrying a gun. Regarding Wright's assertion that a lawyer once interrupted the purported interaction between Williams and Diddy, Deal said it's likely that she mistook Christopher for someone else who had a striking resemblance to him. "Sloppy," Deal casually added. During the interview, Williams also clarified another long-standing allegation that he was the violent ex-boyfriend who had harmed Halle's hearing in the 1990s. He's talked about this previously, but this time he wasn't holding back. "It was Wesley Snipes, not me, who busted her eardrum." William claims that they are still friendly. He disclosed that he and Harley are still very close friends, adding that he kept silent about the true events for years, in part because his notoriety had diminished. "I remarked, wow, I guess because I'm not on the A-list anymore, they've been told they can't tell the truth." Christopher revealed something many fans were unaware of: his marriage in one of the most unexpected parts of the conversation. He wed Natalie Mlin back in 1995. Despite their eventual split, Christopher disclosed that he still views her as his best friend and that they are still legally married. Christopher Williams, who is now in his late 50s, is not only surviving but flourishing. With the same passion and emotion that made him a success in the 1990s, he is returning to the stage as an actor and singer. His story has changed from one of heartache and demise to one of resiliency and redemption. His voice is still strong, and his presence is captivating. Christopher Williams is living evidence that you can fall and still get back up after everything that has happened to him.